pierwsza stacja Płocka, skrzyżowanie z Wolską, rozumiesz?
No.
To jest pierwsza stacja metra. Druga to jest gdzieś tam przy tej nie, taka idzie jakaś z tym tramwajem, ja zapomniałem, jak się nazywa.
Lazurowa,
Tam wokół Woli.
No i co?
I trzecia stacja, proszę Ciebie, to ta jest przesiadkowa na skrzyżowaniu Górczewskim i tego pierdolonego ciągu kolejowego, gdzie tam jest właśnie kolej do Piaseczna z kolei leci, rozumiesz? Do Piaseczna, szybka kolej miejska.
Jest.
No, S-Bahn, prawda? Strassenbahn. Tak jak w Berlinie. Wszędzie są przesiadki pomiędzy Strassenbahnem a stacjami metra. Ale
do Niemiec,
no. Bo u tych kretynów nie zna swoich granic.
No. A więc właśnie.
Bo oni, wiesz, żałują pieniędzy, tylko potem się z kolei okazuje, jak się bada sektor finansowy, że jest nadpłynność w bankach. A nadpłynność to znaczy, że jest nagle niewykorzystanych pieniędzy, bo nie są udzielone kredyty, bo oni chomikują te pieniądze i to są straty, bo jak jest nadpłynność w bankach polskich, znaczy, że nie ma udzielonego nawet na cele komunalne, bo to jest działalność komunalna, kredytu. Czyli w ogóle nie ma nic, no. I by był syty i obca cała, bo by zniknęła nadpłynność banków przez te 3 stacje po jednej stronie i 3 stacje po drugiej, a po drugiej jeszcze by była sensowność funkcjonalna ruchu w tych stacjach metra. I mało tego, i by było obciążenie tych wagonów, rozumiesz? Maksymalne.
Tak. Także widzisz, taka to jest polityka z tym metrem.
No nie, no tak się nigdzie nie buduje. Ja ci kiedyś mówiłem, że w Madrycie kiedyś był taki plan rozbudowy metra, to było powiedzmy 12 lat temu, to tam oddali w ciągu swoich kilku lat, 2, 3, 180 km metra. No tak. Trzeba wyobrazić coś takiego, to chyba rekord kulziemski.
W ciągu ilu czasu?
No 3 lat. Powiedzmy.
No.
180 km. Z kilkudziesięcioma czy kilkuset nawet stacjami. I dlatego oni mają trzecią pozycję w Europie pod względem długości metra. Tak, pierwsza ma Moskwa, drugie ma drugie ma Londyn, trzecie ma Paryż, nie, oni mają właśnie Madryt.
A Londyn po co?
A dopiero 4. jest Paryż.
A Londyn takie długie ma?
Londyn ma, słuchaj, Moskwa ma 400 km, Londyn ma 380.
O Jezu.
Tylko że Moskwa ma 16 milionów, a Londyn ma 14,5. A Paryż ma 12.
Daj spokój.
A Madryt ma 6 milionów.
Coś nie bardzo tak. Ten
To jest
Londyn.
kolos, no przez Madryt 6 milionów ludzi w jednym miejscu, no tak jest spokój.
No.
To jest jakiś potworny, monstrualny wręcz kolos ten Madryt. I to się stało po wojnie, bo przecież ja ci powiedziałem, że liczba ludności Madrytu w 1939 była taka sama jak Warszawa.
Także widzisz, no.
Berlin ma 4,5 miliona, a miał 5 milionów za Hitlera.
Miasta się rozbudowują.
Czyli ma milion mniej niż za Hitlera. Bo w czasach w 1939 roku Berlin miał 5,5 miliona ludności. A teraz ma 4,5, czyli milion zniknęło. To znaczy zniknęło, bo zwiało do Niemiec Zachodnich.
Właśnie.
Głupota, głupi Niemcy tak. Trzeba było siedzieć, był Berlin tej wielkości co przed wojną. Chyba, że to widać, że on jest kolosem, bo przecież tam się jeździ zupełnie jakbyś się jeździła, nie wiem, po Mazowszu nie ma. On ma szerokość chyba z 50 km, ten Berlin i długość na północ-południe też 50 km. To jest bardzo rozległe miasto. Tylko, że widać, że ono jest niedoludnione, bo część nawiała na zachód, wtedy jak była NRD.
Bardzo dobrze zrobiła.
Tak, bo mniejszy tym komunizm.
Ktoś z tej Moskwy nie chce uciekać.
Właśnie. przykre to, że taka głupota wśród takich prostych ludzi, że nie mają koncepcji, że powinni siedzieć tam, gdzie się urodzili, prawda? Pomijając warunki, nawet materialne, ponieważ coś przyjdzie i się zmieni. Nie będzie wiecznie to, co jest teraz, prawda, ten komunizm. No ale widzisz, wytłumacz takiemu prostemu Niemcowi, że on uważał, że ten komunizm będzie 1000 lat trwał. No i dlatego taka decyzja. A ten komunizm raptem trwał ile? 70 lat. Bo w 1917 roku rewolucja października.
No ale w Rosji coś tam jeszcze trwa.
No tam jest postkomunizm, przecież tam są normy w ogóle działania tych wszystkich urzędów, takie same jak w czasie komunizmu. I tam tylko jest taka otoczka, że oni wciskają taką tandecę, że u nich jest kapitalizm. Wiesz, to zachodowi. No. Tam żadnego kapitalizmu w ogóle nie ma. To jest jakaś sterowana, zamordystyczna gospodarka planowa. No. To nie ma nic wspólnego z żadnym kapitalizmem.
Tak.
To jest taka jakaś sterowana, taka hybryda kapitalistyczno-państwowa. Coś bardzo dziwnego. Nigdzie takiej formy rozwojowej w gospodarce nie ma, gdzie są elementy komunizmu takiego czystego pomieszane z czystym kapitalizmem. Bo u nas to już jest kapitalizm we wszystkich dziedzinach. Nie ma nic socjalistycznego, w sensie wymowy swojej. Nic nie ma.
No właśnie.
Nie, fajnie było, ale troszeczkę za mało się przesunąłem. Ja ci powiem dlaczego ja za mało się, bo ja patrzyłem, już byłem tak przebiany tym wiatrem, a tu wiesz, szczególnie biegnie koło tego stadionu, bo przecież tam nie ma, tam jest pusta przestrzeń. To myślałem sobie, nie, już dalej nie, idę do autobusu. A trzeba było jeszcze powiedzmy 40 minut dodatkowo, żeby jeszcze ten tłuszcz z tego brzucha olbrzymiego, napuchłego, gdzieś zlikwidować przez taki spacer.
No. Tak. Bo Mareczek to mówi, że jest chudy.
No on jest chudy. Przecież to widać, że on w ogóle nie ma brzucha nawet, nic nie ma.
No,
jest tak jak szkielet wygląda. A ja to wyglądam jakbym, ja nie wiem, jakbym ja wżerał tony normalnie. Zobacz jak ja wyglądam. Taki brzuch mam. Jak balon mam normalnie. No. To ja wyglądam jak jakiś kulturysta, który wżera tony.
Mareczek towaru. Jak beczka wygląda.
Ja to czuję nawet, przecież ja nigdy taki gruby nie byłem w życiu. Jak teraz.
A jeszcze ja jego podpuściłam, żebyśmy zadzwoniły do Lidki. I dzwonimy do Lidki.
No.
I Lidka się odzywa.
No i co?
Jakby to Olka, jakby to nie ona, ale to była Lidka. I takim dziwnym, spiętym głosem mówiła. A Mareczek mówi, ja mówię, ty mów normalnie, że w sprawie lekarza chcesz. I on mówi, że no jak tam, normalnie rozmawiaj z nią. I on mówi, no jak tam Lidka? A mówi, no ty dobrze. Mówi, a Mareczek mówi, bo my tu razem śpimy, bo my razem i to i tamto. A Lidka i taka spięta jest, ale potem po 5 minutach rozmowy powiedziała, że nie bardzo może rozmawiać.
Aha. No ale ty z nią rozmawiałeś w ogóle, czy nie?
Także wiesz, no on z nią rozmawiał. No i tego. I cały czas i ona tym spiętym głosem. A ja mówię, słuchaj Lidka, to nieprawda. Mówi, to jest ten Mareczek, chciałam ci powiedzieć. I że po prostu my chcemy w sprawie tego lekarza i tak dalej, i tak dalej. No pogadałyśmy, ale on się pochwalił, że my razem śpimy, że to, że tamto. No ale ja patrzę, że po tym głosie tej Lidki jest jakaś nieswoja. Ja myślę, co ona taka jakaś zawsze rozanielona, a widocznie tam ktoś w domu był, czy jakoś tak. No i dobrze, i myśmy zadzwonili, to ona mówi, że on pojechał, ten lekarz, do Gdańska, to być może dlatego się nie odzywał, że jego nie było. No i ja jadę autobusem i ona nagle do mnie dzwoni. I mówi, żeby zadzwonić, bo ona nie ma dużo na koncie. No to więc ja dzwonię, ale ona wyłączyła. A ona znowu mówi, żeby do niej zadzwonić, ale ona nie ma na koncie. Ja mówię, co ona chce? No i tak dojeżdżam do centrum. I tak dzwonię, to mi się porozmawiałam. To więc ona mówi, że ona dzwoniła do tego lekarza, że on do mnie zadzwoni, a że ja podam ten telefon ewentualnie Mareczka i że ona będzie około 20 maja i tak dalej.
No to fajnie. To wspaniale.
No i ryczałyśmy z tą Lidką ze śmiechu. Ja mówię, no to
a
ty...
ośmieszyłeś ją przynajmniej?
Co?
Czy przynajmniej?
No tak.
Bo ona taka ponura.
No.
Makabryczne, to takie właśnie ponure takie stany ma. A tu powinno się śmiać do rozpuku z tego wszystkiego. Bo się niczym nie przejmuje.
Ona po prostu myślała, że Mareczek, a ja to jest jakaś jedna osoba.
Nie, no co? A fajnie, miała przynajmniej coś się z nią działo ciekawego
No.
z tymi telefonami właśnie w czasie świąt. To jest bardzo przyjemne. Przynajmniej coś się działo, bo tam
Tak.
nie nudy na takiej wiosze. A tu się przynajmniej wielkie miasto odzywa.
No.
Warszawa nie wierzy łzom.
Mhm. Mhm.
Och, jak jestem dzisiaj zmęczony. Też jestem niewyspany, a to nie spałem ciągu dnia, absolutnie.
No.
Słuchaj, jestem wykończony dosłownie, totalnie. No, a się to...
No i dobrze.
Źle zrobiono się, że się nie wyspałem, bo ja i tak w ogóle o 6
Mhm.
rano dzisiaj się obudziłem.
Także proszę Państwa, Birma górą. I ona taka trochę szturnięta, ona się wyłączyła może niechcący,
Nie,
ale
ja
ja
też ma jakieś takie dziwaczne różne pomysły, wiesz,
Ale
z tymi
jednak-
telefonami, wiesz.
jednak zadzwoniłam raz jeszcze i tak już porozmawiałam z nią. No i że mówię, że wiesz, to nie znasz Mareczka, szurnięty, ale to nie o to chodzi, że no, tak trochę o tym mieszkaniu tu porozmawiałyśmy i już tak szybko kończyłam tym telefonem, bo ona jutro nie będzie mogła. Ja mówię, to przecież jutro zadzwonimy od Mareczka. On mówi, nie, to jutro nie będę miała czasu, dzisiaj. Ona widzi, że ten Mareczek taki szurnięty i ona się źle czuła. A nie wiem dlaczego, może ktoś podsłuchiwał.
Jeszcze drugą część tego kilda, Lukanen znaleźć, żeby się
Mhm.
zastosowało, to jest super. Och, jak ja mam pech.
Co?
Echa, mam sam Lukanen, kildę. Nie mogę tego znaleźć, to jest najważniejsze. Trzeba by to brać. O, jest, już znalazłem to. To jest szczęście.
No i co to będzie?
No, Rauni, Lukanen, Lena, Rauni, Lukanen.
A, ta Lena nasza. A to jest aparatka niezła.
No, wiesz.
Ja mówiłam Mareczkowi o Lenie.
Posłuchaj, bo to jest świetna rzecz.
But with gene-modified food and things like that, and we do not know, and nobody knows what's going to happen because they experiment on
Potem
long
będzie druga
range,
część.
and we don't know what happens in a year.
To jest moja właśnie
Just like we
preferencyjna
don't know
babka, ja ona
what
najbardziej
happens, except we start knowing now what
Dlaczego?
happens
Bo
with one
ta baba już jest nad grobem i ona olewa to wszystko. Bo mówi tak jak sprawy są.
blindness and deafness and cancer and whatever, it's totally known. But it's
Że
experimentation
mogą ją
on long
aresztować.
range.
To jest w twoim stylu, ty lubisz takie baby. No jak, no. Przynajmniej inteligentne baby, no.
Mnie bardziej inteligencja przekonuje niż wygląd.
Well, at
No
least
ale
the
ona
man
właśnie
was
ma
very
tą
sick.
inteligencję.
No.
And since the goal that I have read of the elite, if I can use that word, is to diminish our population on planet Earth by at least 2/3, maybe even 5 billion. So that's very
And
negative.
explore that more. I mean, we're facing this new disease which is coming out, the
Swine?
swine flu.
Oh, that's just rubbish. I mean, that is really rubbish. You know, it's not the swine flu that's dangerous, it's the injections. Because it's supposedly it's not only swine, but it is human virus mixed with swine virus, mixed with bird virus. And of course, behind the whole thing is to diminish world population, because it's very toxic, and to get milliards and milliards and milliards into the pockets of those who put them out. Rumsfeld is an owner also in one of the big drug companies. And since they want to diminish the population, so they start saying that children and the pregnant women are the first ones. Eliminate the next generation.
So you've been trying to alert certain governments about this?
Not governments, but I have written information to Finland, because I don't think it's going to work. Because even if WHO...
It has been tried before, in the late 70s?
Yes, 76 they had in the States the swine flu, and it was stopped, the injections, after 3 weeks, because so many people died or got Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is their neurology was destroyed. So now they're making a little adjustment and doing it the same. And before that, they have also made sure in the States that people don't get compensation for the damage in their health. Because previously, they had to pay big amounts, like you know in the States,
To jest właśnie ta babka, o której tam bardzo inteligentna.
But now they have a law
Nie chodzi o wygląd, tylko o
that these companies are not liable, nothing in compensation if the patient is killed or if the patient is sick for life. So they have really thought about it.
So they can poison us and kill us and get away with it scot-free.
That's right.
So how is this happening? How are so many governments allowing this to happen?
Because they're not allowing it yet, because nobody has done anything yet.
Może ona
They
chciała
are just
powiedzieć don't
having a scary program in
recompensate.
the mass media.
To
All
bez
mass media
okolicznic,
says, oh, it's
ale-
going to be terrible. Now it's something, pam, pam, pam. It's a scary
Ale nie można
propaganda.
powiedzieć, że to
And people get
nikąd.
scared because they don't know. Now, WHO has ordered that, everybody has to be by force injected. Previously, WHO did not have this ability to tell them to force any government, because it was only recommendations. But it was 97, 98, I recall, that they signed with 194, was it, states about that if there is a pandemic, real serious pandemic, so then they give an order. Now, in the beginning of June, WHO said pandemic 6, that's the highest. Now, go to any country in the world. People are not sick. There are not millions in swine influenza. So this was just done to force people and prepare the governments to give injections by force. But it's not going to work. I don't think Norway is
So
going
do
to
you
do
think
it.
the figures released by the World Health Organization are actually false?
Of course they are. Of course. Of course.
Injection.
But you have to remember, why do they do this? Always remember who benefits. Who benefits? They have been forced, in my mind, to do this. And by whom? Big Pharma. Big Pharma, which is, deals with the world population and the world money and all this. It's millions.
So what's the ultimate strategy, do you think, that's happening with this? What's their target? What's their intent?
The target is to get rid of so many people as possible and to get as much money for them as possible. But I think they have calculated wrong this time. Because already in the Bilderberg meeting, the 14th and 15th of May this year, 2009, in Hellas, there was almost a split when they were discussing this. And I can well imagine that people normally, attending, do not always agree with Mr. Kissinger's plan to eliminate a great deal of world population. And now, for instance, yesterday, the Finnish government made a decision, changed laws, which is very interesting. Changed laws that the swine influenza is not anymore on the list of being a dangerous, serious, contaminating disease. And that means that, of course, then people have to pay for themselves. It's a money question too. But in my mind, of course, this is a legal question for the lawyers. But in my mind, if something is not a dangerous, contaminations disease, you cannot be forced to take an injection, right? So I think they were very, very smart. Also, I just read that from the Folk Institute of Health in Norway, that director had said that there has never been many meaning to force people to take, but they can take an injection, and I hope nobody does, especially not children, especially not pregnant women, and actually nobody.
No. Taka babka rozpędzona, jakby w kosmos leciała.
Druga część jest.
No ta babka się rozpędziła, bo ona chce w kosmos lecieć.
Bo ona jest bardzo inteligentna, no
No.
niestety, no. Dlatego właśnie jest ciekawa wygląda. Poza tym, to jest tutaj, można to oglądać, a to zobaczyć, powiedzmy na pół miesiąca to już w ogóle nic nie. Bo to jest niebezpieczne po prostu. To jest po prostu kawa na ławę, no.
Boją się. Tato Mareczek się boi, żeby czego nie powiedzieć.
Druga część. I pamiętaj, żebyś posłuchał dokładnie, bo lepiej jest na angielskim, więc lepiej rozumiesz to, co nam mówi.
Was collapsing.
Yeah.
With the loss of major sections of the original interviews by sources and beings unknown, we return now in the summer to reshoot the lost interviews with Rani Kilda. Rani's books are now out of print, but here are some of them as we return to soon. We start with an important conference in Moscow, held just before the breakup of the Soviet Union, where top US military were in attendance.
We are here today because certain things happened since the last interview, namely that certain information that you imparted the first time was somehow deleted. So could you go over that again about specifically where you went to conference in Moscow and things like that, those sort of events to meet other people?
Yes, it was interesting to find out what parts of the interview were deleted, which to me show that those are the parts that people should not know. Big Brother doesn't want that people know about space and real findings in space. This Moscow conference was opened by General Popovich, a cosmonaut, and Dr. Asharsa was the chairman, and I did not know at that time that he was also chief of Navy intelligence of the Soviet Union. This standard gives UFO conferences to general public, which was incredible in my mind. At the end...
So this was open to the general public in
Yes.
Moscow as well?
Yes, but we were only 4 from the West. They were all over from the Soviet Union at that time. And those from the West, there was an American general, Army's intelligence chief, can you imagine? And his...
Can you name him?
Yes, General Albert Stubblebine, and his now wife, psychiatrist Rima Leibov, and Victoria was a journalist and now married to Colonel John Alexander, who is very, very knowledgeable about space, UFOs and mind control. And at the end of the conference, I was asked if I would like to see something very specific, and I couldn't understand what. I said, sure, what do you want to show me? And they took me to the cellar of this institute, and it was behind so thick iron doors, several of them, 3, 4, I recall, and I thought, what is this? This is like going to a secret vault of the bank. And there was a huge hall full of UFO pictures from all the walls, in all the walls, and then a huge map of the Soviet Union with pins. And I stopped immediately and said, what are these? They ignored my question. I thought that they could have been landing sites of UFOs. But anyway, what they specifically wanted me to see was a story of Anatoly Malchev. And I was so surprised because I have lectured on Anatoly Malchev in my previous lectures, because this happened to be in 75.
What was Who is she exactly?
Well, he was a woodworker in the woods, and all of a sudden a UFO landed next to him. And humanoids came out and asked him for a ride to come along. And he was courageous, and he went along. And then they were flying for some time, and they passed the moon. And on the other side of the moon, the dark side so-called, of the moon, he saw lights, and he asked, what are these? So he was told there are bases on the dark side of the moon. And then they flew maybe 2 hours or something, and they landed on a planet. And when he got out, he got a shock of his life, because the people who came to greet him and meet him were his dead relatives and friends, who were in perfect shape and beautiful and, in perfect health. And this was deleted. So I thought that's very interesting, because that shows something about life on planet Earth. It showed to me, at least, that we're all one. ETs, the dead, which we call the dead, the energy of the dead, is not dead, but just continues. And us.
Their souls, perhaps? Or?
Well, you can call them, I would use rather a not religious term like soul. I would say energy bodies. We are light energy, beings of light. And that was there. It was not in the physical, even it looked exactly like the physical in the last reincarnation. And if somebody was blind or deaf or had an amputated arm, they were whole. Because all these are in the physical body, they are not in the light body. Your light body cannot have any defects. And that maybe explains the medical phenomena of a so-called phantom touch. If somebody has amputated your arm, so you still feel the pain in your fingers, and you don't have physical fingers.
Nagrodę Nobla trzeba, że nikt się w ogóle chce gadać na ten temat. Jak ona musiała mieć z tym styczność kiedyś.
That I have never seen.
Skoro jeszcze i
But
teraz
there's a lot between the earth and the skies that we don't know about.
So what else happened at this conference, and were you able to debate and discuss with the other people that were there?
Well, I didn't debate, because I don't speak Russian, and I had a lady, a radio engineer, who was also a journalist of Anomalia magazine in Leningrad at that time, and I asked her to come and sit next to me and interpret a little bit. But next day she just vanished, and like I said in the previous interview, 2 males came next to me, and one was a colonel, one was a general. And after that I was surveilled 24 hours, I'm sure. But it was interesting that after all this, they still asked me to come and see this hall. Why did they want to show it to me? And I asked the American lady who was there last year in an American UFO conference, did they invite you too? Because I was alone with them. And she said, no. Why did they invite me?
So you were alone with the Russians in this room?
Yes.
So Stapledine...
No, they went. They
weren't brought in?
And like I found out, they were not even invited. Interesting. I think the reason may be that I had lectured of Anatoly Malchev. And of course they know everything. Secret services in the US and Russia, they know everything.
So,
and they wanted to show me that, yeah, you're really dealing with something which is real. It's not just a story.
So were you able to talk to the Americans at all?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So with conversation,
no.
How were they...
I did not talk about this because this was at the end of the conference, and we left.
But how did such a senior, high-ranking American group be in Moscow? This is before the Soviet Union broke up.
Yes, it was just about breaking up. I don't know. It was through Vrima Laibo I found out about this conference. So it seems to me that Russia and US have very, very much in common with the space exploration, and it's only we, the usual people, who don't know it, because they act as if they would be, confronting each other. No, they're big bells, like...
But more importantly, on this level of ufology.
That's right, exactly. Because, of course, the idea in the 50s was that it could be a threat to planet Earth. Now they all know, just as well Russians as Americans, that there is no threat, absolutely none. And one interesting thing was that came out of the conference that the Russians have lost many planes and pilots because of fightings with UFOs, and it's always we, Earth people, who attack. But of course their technology is maybe thousands of years ahead of us, so we always lose. And now it was stated there in the conference that now it's an order in Russia not to attack, because we always lose, and why should they lose their pilots and planes? So they know that they better let them be alone. But it came out also that there are, of course, two dimensions to the UFO question. A member of Soviet Academy of Sciences stated that, of course, it's a mechanical one. I mean, it is a mechanical device that flies like a plane. But then there is the pilots, the humanoids, and then that comes to the consciousness of the pilot and the consciousness of human beings. Now that seems to go together. And they also, which I think is one of the worst things that they don't want people to know, is time travel. They come from our future. And they can also go back. I mean, there's a technology even for us, but it has taken many, many lives when they have been doing experimentations with Monta project in the States, for instance. Young children especially, they die with these experiments. But when you think that they come from our future, so you could also state that we see our own future. Because a man is a mind, not a body, and we're multi-dimensional, which is something which is very hard for people to understand. But if you think that in your dreams, you are also in another frequency, and in your dreams you can go wherever. And we think that dreams are just a product of stress or your experiences and a product of your brain activity. Because today's medicine still holds on to the old paradigm that it's your brain that thinks, it's your brain that is the thing. It isn't. It's like a projector. Film is much more important than the projector, because projector can go kaput, you know, something goes wrong, so okay, you take the film and put it into a new projector, and it continues. That's exactly how a human being should be thought of. A human being is a consciousness, absolutely a consciousness, and can travel anywhere in the universe. And especially as proof, I would say that US military is training special officers into out-of-body experiences for espionage. Exactly.
Yeah.
And also for space travel, because space travel is not that dangerous when you're out of your body in an energy form than if you are in a spaceship, which can go, like we have now read, I just have to laugh that the toilets go kaput or something like that. That's the big news. But what really happens in space, that is never talked about, because NASA is a military, not a civilian institution like we think. And of course, their secret astronauts and their secret programs to other planets, Mars, etc., and even further, are never revealed. I think it takes about 50 years before they really... Well, of course, hacking into somebody's computer is criminal.
Yes,
so in that respect, but also it was so sensitive information that he gave that added to his destiny in a way. But I'm happy he did that. That should be announced more and more, even if people are harassed when they come up with this. I know it from my own experience. I mean, there are very few days in the whole year that I'm not harassed by neighbors or by somebody else. And I've been always harassed when I have given an interview or a lecture or written an article or written a book or whatever. Then it really comes back, like, you know, revenge.
So since the last interview, you were wearing certain things and they...
Yes, I just changed clothes this morning, and I was looking at, I thought maybe I should have the same clothes on, but all of a sudden the shirt that I had on with little bricks gone. I bought it in the States, so I was really mad that it's gone. The same thing happened when I came from a non-lethal weapons conference in Germany. In 3 days, some Norwegians came in and made an interview, which is on internet, in insuspeilet.no. And the very nice violet jacket that I had, the silk jacket, I loved it. It was very good, and the color was, you know, transformation type. That was gone the next day. So always something is gone, and every time I come home I see, what have they taken now? It's usually small things, but it's always emotional things. And the funny thing is, really, that when I concentrate my cell phone, like I had an old compass from my father, I took it from the drawer and looked, remembered I was 15 when I got it, an old compass, still working fine. Put it back into the drawer. In a few days I took it again, was gone. Another thing...
So do you think that you've got company? invisible?
I don't think so. I don't think those were dematerializations, but of course I can't prove it. I think it was somebody coming in. Anyway, it's somebody who sees with my eyes and hears with my ears, and they can have a wall-through-wall radar in the next house if they want to. And every time I go out, somebody bangs the doors or, surveillance. And also, when I looked at some porcelain thing with lobster signs, oh, I'm glad they haven't taken this. Next day I saw it was gone. So they always react to the things that I concentrate on. I look at the photograph, well, I'm glad this I still have, it's gone. So either they are using this technology of remote viewing, mind control, whatever, through the satellites, or then it is physical, somebody is following with a radar through the walls. And of course that is always in a neighboring house. Oh yeah, they know. They even know your thoughts. And faster than we do, as I mentioned. Our brain is very, very slow. Well, I've been dealing with, in the conferences with remote viewers, talk to them. One of the trainers is John Alexander at Monroe Institute. I heard that from an acquaintance of mine who was working at the Monroe Institute in Virginia, USA, and there they have layers of, well, it was, I think, three stores down in cellars, and it was for maybe a catastrophe that they would be safe. And the people had to stay in a tiny little studio room with a bed and a little table, and they got things over their ears, and then the leader, whether it was John Alexander or somebody else, because he was dealing with the military personnel, but then there are civilian courses too. Yes. So the leader takes a mic, and all those in their cells hear it, and it starts with the waves of the Pacific. So you get really relaxed, and then it is an order, go. And where do you go? That is, you get out of your body, and you go to a Pacific island, for instance. It's a military base. It's always military, of course, yes, because that's what they're interested in seeing. And then you go around, hovering around, you see everything, and come back and report. You can go to other planets, you can experience things, you can also go to the frequency of your dead relatives, and you can see them and talk to them. Well, I think it is, because Hollywood movies are often based on reality. Think of, movies like Control Factor from 2003. It shows exactly how mind control is done. It's old-fashioned technology, of course. They don't show today's technology. They screw your neck with a device, but you don't need to, because the smallest ones are 2 micromilli. So it's old technology. But the idea is that they microchip you, and after that they control you. Totally.
How does one try to combat this kind of mind control?
I think number one is awareness. You have to know that the technology exists, and it's nothing to do with pathology or that you're not crazy or whatever. But there's a good exercise, I just read it from a German doctor, that you can sort of, for just 1 minute, do certain exercises. Like this, for 20 seconds, you sort of disassociate. Then do the same with your ears for 20 seconds, and then do this 2-3 times a day. I couldn't understand how that could work, but I've done it, and it does work. It does work. So that's one thing that you can do.
This sort of subtly release tensions in the muscles of the,
yeah,
of the brain.
that's right. Yeah. And that's what he seems to instruct. So at least that's something that you can try. And then you have to tell others, because even if they don't believe you, then somebody else tells them, somebody else, a 3rd, 4th, 5th person, then they start seeing that there's something terribly, terribly wrong with planet Earth today and the people who are on the top. Well, you can do it with many, many, many kinds of things, but I think the very usual one is with electromagnetic fields. You're being beamed at a certain frequency. And when that frequency hits you, they have certain frequencies for certain feelings. The feeling of touch, of eyes, of ears, whatever. They have each frequency.
What sort of frequencies are we talking about? Are we talking extra low frequencies?
Well, like some 25 hertz or 9 hertz or whatever. And then another thing is they are using drugs. And for instance...
is this in our food? I mean, we've heard of the fluoride debate, or fluoride in water.
Well, that's one way. I mean, putting into water and putting into your food all kinds of things that are not good for you. And they know it very well that they're not good for us. That affects also your brain activity and your psyche. But
that's involved with the food, which the European Union are forcing on us.
Yeah, well, Americans are mostly forcing it, you know, the American companies, but with gene-modified food and things like that, and we do not know, and nobody knows what's going to happen, because they experiment on long range, and we don't know what happens in a year or 20 years. Just like we don't know what happens, except we start knowing now, what happens with mobile phones in 20 years.
Ah.
You know, they cause brain tumors and blindness and deafness and cancer and whatever. It's totally known. But it's experimentation on a long range.
Do you think that those frequencies and those devices are specifically selected to test on us? Do you think they're changing the species, or trying to kill us, or change us?
Well, at least they're making us very sick. And since the goal that I have read of the elite, if I can use that word, is to diminish our population on planet Earth by at least 2/3, maybe even 5 billion. So that's very
Can you
negative.
explore that more? I mean, we're facing this new disease which is coming out.
Swine?
The swine flu.
Oh, that's just rubbish.
What-
I mean, that is
Rubbish.
really rubbish.
Kłamstwo.
It's not the swine flu
Głupstwo.
that's dangerous, it's the
Bzdura.
injections. Because it's supposedly, it's not only swine, but it is human virus, mixed with swine virus, mixed with bird virus. And of course, behind the whole thing is to diminish world population, because it's very toxic, and to get milliards and milliards and milliards
Toxic.
into the pockets of those who put them out.
Oj,
Mazur
kosmitka,
is an owner
kosmitka.
also in one of the big drug companies. And since they want to diminish the population,
To się z
so they
człowieka
start saying
zrobiło.
that children and pregnant women
O
are
Jezus.
the first ones.
Ona
Eliminate
powinna poślubić, wiesz kogo?
So you've been
Rokitę.
alert
Tego z Krakowa.
governments, but I have written
Jeszcze
information
całe
to
życie
Finland
Gichotonelli
because,
rzuci.
I don't think it's going to work, because even if WHO...
It has been tried before in the late 70s.
Yes,
No, ja
76 they had
zwariuję.
in the States the swine flu, and it was stopped, the injections, after 3 weeks, because so many people died or got
Jak
Guillain-Barré
może człowiek
syndrome,
się
which is,
zapędzić?
their
Ale we
neurology was
wszystkim.
destroyed. So now they're making it
Tylko ten
little
Bóg jest cierpliwy na niebie, na to
adjustment
się
and
wszystko
doing it the same. And before that, they have also made sure in the States that people don't get compensation for the damage in their health. Because previously, 76, they had to pay big amounts, like, you know, in the States, their compensation is big when you destroy somebody's health. But now they have a law in the States that these companies are not liable, nothing in compensation if the patient is killed or if the patient is sick for life. So they have really thought about it.
So they can poison us and kill us and get away with it scot-free.
That's right.
So how
But
is this happening? How are so many governments allowing this to just happen?
because they're not allowing it yet, because nobody has done anything yet. They are just having a scary program in the mass media. All mass media says, oh, it's going to be terrible. Now it's something, bum. It's a scary propaganda. And people get scared because they don't know. Now, WHO has ordered that, you know, everybody has to be by force injected. Previously, WHO did not have this ability to tell them to force any government, because it was only recommendations. But it was 97, 98, I recall, that they signed with 194, was it, states about that if there is a pandemic, or, you know, real serious pandemic, so then they give an order. Now, in the beginning of June, WHO said pandemic 6, that's the highest Now, go to any country in the world.
Może widzisz, ci, którzy nie rozumieją angielskiego, to nic nie skorzystają, bo teraz
So this was just
to
done
nie ma
to
takich
force
tłumaczeń na
people
fonie.
and prepare the governments to give injections by force. But it's
No
not
ale
going to work.
Czkowi
I
chciałem
don't think
pokazać,
Norway is
teraz
going to do it.
The figures released
jak
by
oni
the World
będą,
Health Organization are actually false. Or
Of course they are, of course. But you have to remember, why do they do this? Always remember who benefits. Who benefits? They have been forced, in my mind, to do this. And by whom? Big Pharma. Big Pharma, which is, deals with the world population and the world money and all this. It's millions.
So what's the ultimate strategy, do you think, that's happening with this? What's their target? What's their intent?
The target is to get rid of so many people as possible and to get as much money for them as possible. But I think they have calculated wrong this time. Because already in the Bilderberger meeting, the 14th and 15th of May this year, 2009, in Hellas, there was almost a split when they were discussing this. And I can well imagine that people normally, attending do not always agree with Mr. Kissinger's plan to eliminate a great deal of world population. And now, for instance, yesterday, the Finnish government made a decision, changed laws, which is very interesting, changed laws that swine influenza is not anymore on the list of being dangerous, serious, contaminating disease. And that means that, of course, then people have to pay for themselves. It's a money question too. But in my mind, of course, this is a legal question for the lawyers. But in my mind, if something is not a dangerous, contaminations disease, you cannot be forced to take an injection, right? So I think they were very, very smart. Also, I just read that from the Folk Institute of Health in Norway, the director had said that there has never been many meaning to force people to take, but they can take an injection, and I hope nobody does, especially not children, especially not pregnant women, and actually nobody.
Where do you think the strategy of all these kind of things, mind control, and the involvement of kinds of ETs, is there an extraterrestrial element here?
A very good question, because of course...
In other words, how much in bed are the secret authorities in bed of the government?
There's a lot of disinformation, especially from the States. They claim that they have ETs in Area 51, and one specifically, a gentleman I know from UFO conferences stated that he has been sitting in the same table with an ET, and they put on a was it blue or white shirt on him so that he would look more human. I think that's just BS. But the contacts that exist are both physical and mental, and I think the mental contacts are much, much more important because they happen with just anybody. The physical contacts with the military, when there's a crushed UFO, and if they get alien bodies, or if they get alive aliens, like it has been claimed, and I don't doubt that that couldn't be true, so they get a lot of information. But it is not that aliens, so-called, would be dictating to us what we are doing. This is a free planet, and we have free will, and this is in my mind, it's also an experimentation planet, because they have, in some planets, humanoids, people, intelligence beings, that have kind of a group intelligence, and they have a lot of clones, and we are just starting, in my mind, to have human clones. Although in '77, I was told already at the TV in Utah, they have had a clone on TV. But of course, there's no difference in cloning a human and cloning an ape or cloning a sheep or whatever. It's the same technology. And easier than that, of course, is to microchip the human population, then they become biological robots. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, because the elite wants only the elite and slave class. They don't want the middle class, because middle class can, well, create a revolution.
Yes.
But slave class doesn't. And of course the elite just thinks that they are the ones who will have all the benefits and nobody else. I think David Icke has gone a little bit too far when he calls certain members of the British royal family, for instance, for lizards or whatever. I mean, in a way, if you think that man is a mind, not a body, and we're multidimensional, so a part of our energy could be in different dimensions at the same time, just as well in different planets. But to draw it into here and call people, whatever, lizards or aliens, and not. Again, our energies are multidimensional, can come from different places at the same time.
What kind of space contacts have you had?
I've had previously all kinds, mostly psychological, in dreams or in hypnosis, but also physical. I remember I was at that time in Rovaniemi, chief medical officer, and I had a friend visiting me. She was an actress, a young actress.
Sorry, this is in Finland?
This is in Finland, at the Polar Circle. Young actress who was about 78, I think, around that time. And I had met Andrei Bukhari, who is now deceased, but he was a That's right. Yeah. And I had dinner with him once when we were both lecturing at the University of Wisconsin about UFOs. And he invited for a dinner date, and then told me that he and Yuri fly with UFOs. And I looked at him and I said, look, you're a respectable medical doctor, how can you tell me stories like this? And he said, but this is absolutely true. And I did not understand to ask, was it physical or was it mental flying? But anyway, then I confronted him. I said, well, why don't you come and take me along? I'd love to come. And he says, well, where do you live?
By way of a joke?
Yeah, in a way, I just, take me along. I'd love to fly. And then he asked all the details where I live, and I said it's next to a river, and there's a plane, so any plane could land if it comes like that. And he says, I have to ask for permission. And I thought, why does he, and who does he ask for permission? I was stupid not asking it, I just thought. And then I forgot about it, and 2 months passed, I was back in Doradzanie at home with this actress, and I was reading a booklet I had gotten just the same day, and it was called The First Contact. It was haiku poems, like Japanese poems. And the name was First Contact. And then I just drifted my glance outside. Oh my Lord, look at that. There was maybe 100 yards from us, 100 yards from the ground, there was a UFO. And I had said, just come, like, ha. And I went into total panic, and so she did too. And I prayed, I said, please don't come, because I realized that now I'm dealing with something that I have no control over, absolutely none, and I don't know what's going to happen. It was hovering there for 15 minutes, and then it just flew away.
Because maybe you didn't come out and say hello?
I didn't do anything but pray that they... No, I did not do but pray, don't come. And we were both totally shocked, and after it left, then we said, no, it was the moon. The moon isn't 100 yards from me, 100 yards from the ground, come on. And we tried to make normal explanations, and
so
we couldn't.
What way? Was this at night time? Or?
It was evening, yeah, it was evening. And the next morning, I opened the papers, and that was a bigger shock, because, you could say that, okay, you just dreamt it or whatever. We were totally awake. No, it was 100 people who had called the police and called the newspaper and reported they had seen something, a phenomenon of light or whatever, right there next to the river. Then they asked the commander-in-chief of Lapland Air Force, and he said it was a Soviet rocket, which stopped for 15 minutes to say, hello, Rami, right? 4 years passed, there was a new commander at Lapland Air Force, and they asked about this incident again, and he said it was a flock of birds. I don't think that our standard, which is very, very internationally high, is that low in the Air Force. It was a straight lie, which they have to give. I have now found out that they have to say it's a flock of birds or planet Venus or whatever, Soyuz. They have to say that if they have had no permission to say that it was a UFO, and usually they never had permission. Then I talked also to the chief of the airport of Rovaniemi. At that time, he's long ago retired, maybe even dead now, but he was a classmate of my mother. So that's why we started talking, and I asked him, have you ever seen? He said twice. Twice he's seen a UFO pass, whoop, past the Rovaniemi airport. Isn't that interesting? Nobody has ever written about that. Well, I only have a couple, things that I want to stress very, very much. And that is number one, man is a mind, not a body. So we are energy. Number two, we cannot die. We can never die. Our body dies, yes, but we are not our body. And then we are absolutely not alone in the universe. And the question of ETs, humans, death, is one question. We're all one. We're all one in the energy. And we can live in our future. They can come to our past. And there's absolutely no death. There's no time in the universe either.
Yeah, our perception of time is a
completely wrong. But we're here to learn. We're here for some reason. And one of the reasons is that, in my mind, this is a very negative planet because we kill our own race. We eat our brothers, that is, meat of animals. And it's not only that we slaughter them, but we also hunt them. And when you or anybody has had a cat or a dog or a cow or whatever, horse, you absolutely know that there's a consciousness in them. They feel, they love, they hate, they're angry. And why would we be the only ones with consciousness on this planet? When our form is different from some other humanoid forms, different from dolphins, different from whales, but they all have consciousness. So we should start concentrating on the consciousness of people. And that way we would see that we're all one. We would not anymore have wars and killings and things like that. But before that, the elite who wants only power and money has to change. And it's up to every one of us to send them love and light, change. And that may be the biggest weapon we ever have, and is the power of our mind.
No, we have the sun. Excellent.
No świetny ten wywiad oczywiście.
Mhm.
To jest straszne wszystko razem. Tak kłamstwo na każdym kroku.
Mhm. No kłamią. Oni kłamią, sobie wyobraź.
Za kogo oni w ogóle tu ludzi mają?